Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the weekly Backdrop Developers meeting. My name is Luke McCormick. I'm a web project manager in San Ramon, California. Go by Cellear on the internet sometimes. And we'll introduce ourselves and then get on with the agendas. Let's go to Robert first.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet in Altadena, California, waiting for snow. And I'll pass it to Tim, who doesn't have to wait.
Yeah, I am Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim, on the internet, in Deerwood. I am coming to you from Deerwood, Minnesota, where we have gotten some snow, not the 10 to 20 inches we were predicted, but enough to, freshen everything up, lots of wind, it's lots of blowing snow. So anyways, let's move on to Greg.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm joining from Melbourne, Australia, and it's summery here, early in the morning, so not too hot, but it's getting there. Really excited. There's a lot of activity in the core issue queue. We do have some blockers. I hope that I can remember everything and bring it up. Who hasn't? Jen, it's you.
Jen Lampton, joining from Oakland, California. Nothing exciting, I guess. Is that everyone?
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll just roll
Are you-
in
Are you getting
to.
snow in Oakland, Jen?
We have a freeze warning.
Okay.
The snow is not actually going to be in Oakland, but on the mountains nearby. So there's a mountain nearby called Mount Diablo, which is like 20 minutes east, and there's Mount Tam, which is about 40 minutes north, and the top of those mountains are supposed to get snow.
Oh.
I did, however, ride in a horse in the sleet this morning, which was not a very pleasant experience. We went today because we're planning tomorrow is going to be complete wash because it's going to be cold and raining. But it was not supposed to rain today. But even though the sun was out, there was like freezing rain falling on us. And I was just like, what is going on? This is not supposed to be happening. So my face ended up like completely frozen, but it was fine.
Okay.
So no actual snow, just some very cold rain that will melt immediately upon hitting the ground. But yeah, it's an exciting winter storm, 24-hour winter storm here in California. Okay, let's see. I went through the list of contributions this week and there were no new modules released, but I know that there's a lot of activity happening on current ones and in the core queue as mentioned previously. For the blog post, Luke, I don't remember what, I remember you were working on that before, but I don't remember, did I miss it? Yeah.
I published it. It's up there.
Oh, I missed it. Okay. I kind of had a feeling that happened. Well, thank you, Luke, for writing the blog post. Yeah, look at that. I'm going to drop a link into Zulip for anyone else who may have missed it. Okay. I appreciate the effort you spent on that, Luke. I know it wasn't, it was not nothing to go through and come up with good descriptions for each of these features. So it's great.
I want to schedule it to do it ahead of time next time so that I can have it out on like release day.
That would be amazing. So it should be theoretically possible for you to start working on it on May 1st, because we should at least know all of the stuff that's in it before the May 15th release.
Right.
I'll put that on my calendar.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, that was it for the community section. I did check the forum post and we did have one topic recommended by Peter, BW Panda. Oh, he also mentioned that there are a ton of RTBC issues in both the bug fix and a few in the milestone as well. So I just want to do a quick shout out to whoever's been doing reviews. I think that might have been you, Greg, reviewing all the work that people are doing, which is fantastic. Sometimes we get a lot of stuff that gets stuck in the needs review spot. So
It was, I guess, Peter has had his own hiatus for a few months now. He was working on some legacy video games or something like that, but he's back, and he's dug up some old issues that were close to ready. I've done reviews for those, and there was some, what do you call it? Tag teaming, or anyways, back and forth. But yeah, there's
Tag teaming.
yeah, I think there's 13 when I checked. Let me just check again. Yeah, there's 17 RTBC issues in both the bug release and the minor release.
That's great. So the issue that Peter brought up that he wanted to have talked about today, which I was hoping Nate would be here to talk about, but maybe we can ping him later to look at the issue, is this issue for updating jQuery in core. Just to start out, the version of jQuery we have in core is completely secure, and that's because we have backported all of the security fixes from newer versions of jQuery into core additionally. It does still show up if you're running a site scan, some kind of an audit to make sure everything is up to date. It will show up on the audit as being a problem because it only identifies the version of jQuery we're using and not if the issues have been resolved or not. So because we're running an older version with a patch, it'll still flag that as being insecure, even though it's not insecure. And so everyone running Backdrop is fine, but it is alarming for people who are getting those audits to have that come up. And, you know, sometimes they have to ask and be like, whoa, no, is this insecure? I've gotten a lot of emails from people who are getting those audits or asking about it and say, no, it's fixed. Don't worry. Here's the solution. Here's the release. Here's the security announcement, all the stuff they need to know about it to know that it's fixed. But it would be nice if that didn't happen. We were on a version that didn't flag that. Would be great. The problem we're facing is that updating jQuery major versions does potentially introduce breaking features. So if someone had implemented something against jQuery 1 and we update to jQuery 3 and a custom code or contributed module they're running that uses that, might not work. And we don't really have a good way to test that. So last I was aware, and it's been a long time since we've talked about this issue, is that we just decided to keep backporting the security fixes until Backdrop 2, and at Backdrop 2 we would jump up to whatever the currently supported version of jQuery is, and that way everyone would be prepared for breaking changes at the big version change in Backdrop. However, there is a new library that has been mentioned in this issue. I think it's called jQuery Migrate, which is supposed to introduce some kind of backwards compatibility. So if you add jQuery 3 and jQuery Migrate, it would make all of the functions you'd written against jQuery 1 work now with jQuery 3. And I think it might be worth considering something like that if we want to introduce it before Backdrop 2. There is also a contrib module for Drupal called jQuery Update that we don't, I think, have one yet for Backdrop yet, that will allow somebody to just select a different version of jQuery and run it on their own site. So that for everybody who, for example, is running that site audit report and they don't want to get those warnings anymore about their jQuery version being insecure, they could add this module and update to jQuery 3 and they know their site would work fine. Because they might not have any custom code that was written against jQuery 1. And that's a viable option. Someone in the issue queue mentioned we could put some version of that in core. I don't like the idea of supporting the same thing more than one way in core. I feel like that's just sort of increasing burden on maintaining more things, because now we have to maintain jQuery 1 and jQuery 3 core or whatever versions we're supporting. And that makes it a lot harder to like write new stuff that like works for both of them and all of that. So my preference would be not to put it in core, but I do think that it needs to exist for people who don't want that error for site audit. And we hadn't been using it originally because when we first released Backdrop, we were on a much newer version of jQuery than Drupal 7 was, but jQuery has come a long way in the last 10 years, however long it's been since we've worked. And I think we do need that option now for people. So I don't know. I would love to hear from other core developers how they feel about it. I mean, maybe jQuery migrate is something we could consider for core. Maybe jQuery update or something equivalent is something we could consider for core. I'm not a core developer, so all I know is what I've heard before and how I feel. But
I have kind of a marketing angle to
Sure.
this. Well, I mean, if the issue is that people see these reports that report a bad version number, that's not actually a bad thing. And for what it's worth, Acquia dealt with the same thing. Acquia has internal versions of PHP and MySQL that would trigger the same alarms. And that
Pantheon
was
does too.
yeah, that was a question we had to answer. It's like, okay, so that version of MySQL, straight from the factory, straight from the distribution is insecure. But the thing you're actually running has been patched and it does not have those security holes. So that came up all the time. I wonder if we could maybe have, SEO our way to having searches show up saying, confronting the issue right on top, and actually, I mean, it becomes a selling point because, whereas where the people coming in are worried about security because they're checking for these things and they find their way to this, we get the answers like, not only are they not worried about the issue that you came here for, but we're actually have better security than you even know. Like we've got these things ported in, we're totally fucking on top of this. and if that's one of your concerns, this becomes an asset rather than something that is a downside. So that's a marketing approach to it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I was just looking back through my emails to people who contacted the security team about it to see if I linked to like any pages on backdropcms.org that we could promote more.
Should we have a blog post on this?
But yeah, I think a dedicated blog post would be better than a security advisory, which is what I likely would have used.
Right. Or how about, I mean, I looked at the status report in our page, and it reports the version of jQuery, but maybe it could support, maybe we could have like a little thing there, do jQuery
asterisk.
Patch the security, thing, like,
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I think that same thing could be true for like CK Editor too, because I think we have a couple of patches against our version of CK Editor. So yeah, having a little way to support, like we're using this version of this module, but it has this security fix included would be really useful for the status report.
Can I suggest something? Maybe it's a bit radical, but so I remember when each time that we would update jQuery version 1, we had a list somewhere of things that needed to be tested, like the buttons for the text editor, things like that we made sure like it was a list of things, but it was all manual. I was wondering if instead of porting the jQuery update module as it is, which provides greater versions, if we actually, because we can test one of the concerns that I'm reading in the issue, that's issue 3106 in the issue queue, by the way. One of the concerns is what happens with contrib, right? And yeah, surely we could port jQuery update, but can we port a version that actually downgrades to 1, and then if modules realize that they are broken, they can declare a dependency on that? As in, make sure that we update core to a modern, secure, that doesn't trigger any of the, the audits. And then if contrib says, because we don't know for sure, this is just a possibility, right? That we might break contrib. And for the sake of that, we are holding back core. What if we upgraded core and we ported a version of jQuery update that actually downgrades to 1?
Oh, interesting.
And then if there is a module that says, hey, that version of core broke my contrib module, then you can depend on the contributed module, which is a downgrade, not an upgrade.
jQuery downgrade module. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I still think that we shouldn't just like break people's sites though, and like in a core upgrade.
Yeah,
So my instinct would be like if we could leverage the like module installer or something, because we can, I guess we aren't even going to know like which modules or which custom code they might need that might break. So
Right.
it's really hard for us to do that automatically too. I do like the idea though, and I think that something like that would be really useful even after we even if we can't upgrade until Backdrop 2, having something like that could be really useful as part of the upgrade path for people who are coming from Backdrop 1 who maybe do have custom code that uses it, who need whatever. But
Because
yeah,
what
I
we-
don't.
Yeah, because what we've done in Backdrop and also being done in Drupal is if a feature like there's a lot of cleanup happening now in Drupal 10 and they're removing modules like color module, but instead of completely deleting them, they're just moving them to contrib. So I thought that maybe we could do a similar thing here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can do that too, but I think we have to do it at Backdrop 2. I don't think we can do it before that. I think just because, I don't know, we're promising people that this is going to be safer, more stable than Drupal or easier to manage or whatever. And I think, we've done a pretty good job so far of trying to deal with backwards compatibility. And I don't think we should be like, except for, I think we've got to be sort of stick to that. But if we can find a way to do it that we know it'll work, like with this like jQuery migrate or whatever. I feel like right now we're like, we don't know what we're breaking. We don't know if we're breaking anything at all, which is that's really hard from someone to be like, well, there is a chance that we are affecting 0 sites by doing this. And that's really hard to not do it because of that. And I think that if we can just make that more likely, if there are backwards compatible jQuery wrapper libraries that would make it much more likely that that number is 0, then I would feel more confident in making that change. And I think that downgrading the version of jQuery is also less attractive to me than a backwards compatible wrapper system that allows people to use the newer version of jQuery. I don't know if that's always possible. I don't really understand the differences between jQuery 1 and jQuery 3 enough to know if that's going to be 100% effective. But yeah, I don't know. I like all these ideas. I don't know what's best for core. My concern is existing sites that upgrade aren't going to necessarily read the notes. They're not going to know what might or might not happen. And they'll just be like, my Backdrop site is broken. And then, maybe it is just, one widget on their homepage, but that's the most important thing on their site. And now they're mad because.
I understand the reluctance to do exceptions, but if it becomes important enough, and if we announce it in advance, and maybe we can even in the upgrade process have a warning before the upgrade happens, saying that there is an exception in this particular upgrade that's unusual. Please be aware of it and be prepared to fix it. I don't know. I'm just saying if we do decide that it warrants an exception, there might be some extraordinary steps we can take
Is it worth
to make it less likely that it breaks somebody's site because they're not aware. But I'd rather not have to do that for sure.
How do we because the only way to discover if contrib has actually problems is to allow people to test the newer version. Otherwise it all falls on us to test everything, right? If we found a way to make it easier for people, which you could argue that jQuery update is that, yes, but how do we not force evangelize using that and saying, hey, if you want to help us, install that module, switch to version 3 and report back what is broken or something, but this needs to happen in core or be endorsed via the project browser, as you said, or something like that.
Yeah, I think endorsed via the project browser is good. We could also do a dashboard notification. I think there's a lot of things we can do to get the word out to people. And I think that if we did decide we wanted to update the 3, another thing too is Backdrop 2 is only 2 years away now. And so it is also, I know, is that a lot of time or is that not a lot of time? I don't know.
Except that we keep saying that's the earliest, right? We've never said it's going to, So when
Yes,
you
it's
say
a-
it's 2 years away, no, it's at least 2 years away. It could be
Yeah.
5 years away. We don't
Yeah,
know that.
yeah, that's true.
Right.
And also just as a side note to that, if the Drupal community decides to like push the D7 end of life yet another year, does that affect our?
No. Mm-mm. Yeah, I think we voted on that last time they pushed the end of life. We're like, this is getting ridiculous. We can't keep pushing our date based on their date. But I do think that it might change, like whether we remove the Drupal compatibility layer in Backdrop 2, right? Like maybe we just leave that until Backdrop 3, until Drupal 7 is actually,
Yes, end of life.
not used anymore. I mean, it'll be end of life, but like if 50% of Drupal sites are still on it, that doesn't count, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way-
What would be the incentives for upgrading the jQuery? Are there a lot of new features and the newer things that people want to use, or is it just the security stuff?
I think it's just the security stuff. I imagine there are some new features. I imagine most of the old features have been rewritten in ways that are more modern and more efficient. But jQuery is also like not the hottest way to do JavaScript anymore. And so I
Yeah.
imagine that there's not a ton of active development going on in jQuery in terms of new
and
features.
it's only there because we need it and Contrib needs it. So end users do not need it. So unless you're developing a
They don't
custom-
know. They don't
Oh, we
know
don't
they
know.
need
We
it.
don't know if they
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah.
They don't know
I,
where
uh,
it's used. Yeah.
I would worry that there's a lot of custom modules that I don't know if specifically within the Backdrop world, within the Drupal world, I would worry greatly about that, because there's all sorts of people that learned jQuery tricks that they used and
Yeah.
they've now moved on, leaving stuff behind to crash.
Yeah. I feel like I saw it a lot with custom editorial interfaces.
Yeah.
So, maybe not so much on the front end of like use our Solar calculator or whatever for people using the website, but for administrators who are doing like bulk update actions and that sort of thing. There's a lot of interfaces where developers get really excited about all the little JavaScript things you can do. But
Then I'm not sure if you saw the recent comments on after your comment in that issue 3106, Nate replied, and he says that he'd rather not ship core with jQuery migrate, but he hinted that it might be a good idea to incorporate an equivalent of jQuery update in core. Then
okay. Yeah, I hadn't seen that.
that would be a way. Like if we have two versions of jQuery, we can make sure that new installations
Get the new version.
get the new version, and there's the option if a module of Contrib module has broken, they can go into the settings and switch back to the version 1, and we don't touch existing sites.
Yeah, we did also have this issue come up previously where we were gonna store, I don't remember which version it was. We were gonna store like the version of Backdrop that was installed somewhere. And we could also use that to like determine whether someone gets the new version or old version too. But yeah, for new, like as installing would be easy to switch it.
Yeah.
I also don't know. So like jQuery upgrade the module is basically like a user interface for selecting which version of jQuery your site uses. I'm not sure we need the user interface in core if we're gonna try and make sure people either use 3 if it's a new install or 1 if it's not. They don't need to make that choice themselves. It could be like a
Setting
I don't
speeds,
know.
setting.
Yeah, or a config value system core or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I think Zell is probably working on it. Just not sure yet how to implement it. I think that's sort of what everyone's thinking. So
Okay,
we'll see.
that's interesting.
Okay.
If we want to move on, I have certainly probably an easy related question, which is there were some security releases yesterday. And I think, right, some contrib modules.
Technically, the releases were last Wednesday.
Well,
but
maybe that's my
emails
question.
went out yesterday.
Okay, that addresses my question, because I got the emails yesterday. And then I went to the website, and I'm sharing my website quick, and everything is from last week. So
Yeah.
is it basically what you're telling me is the emails that went out yesterday were for these releases? from
Yes.
last- Okay.
And actually, it's a little worse than that. I went back through all of the 2022 security issues recently, and there were a bunch of, I'm not sure if you guys remember this, there were a bunch of Drupal modules last year that became unsupported, and then they became resupported and a security release came out. But in Drupal land, as soon as a module becomes unsupported, it no longer needs a security release. The release that makes it available again is just a regular release. And so for Backdrop, we had parallel regular releases, even though for us, we never had unsupported modules. So those really should have been security releases. And so I went ahead and wrote a bunch of security advisories for each of those, just so that everybody would know, like, hey, this module is secure. And, I put as much information as I could. Not, we don't have access to the Drupal issue. There wasn't an equivalent security advisory for Drupal. So sometimes you're guessing. It's like, what was wrong with it? We don't know. Only the maintainers know. So there were some additional emails that went out this Wednesday that were reflecting releases from last year that just didn't have advisories and didn't have emails that went out when the module was released. So there should have been a flurry this week that was like, here's all of the stuff you missed. Yeah. So there you'll also see some stuff like, the file field paths is an example of one of those.
Yeah. That all helps me understand what's going on. So you should be able, this should show the most current security releases for Backdrop, Contrib, and Core. Okay, so this is the definitive place. I just wanted to verify that and better understand what happened. I very weirdly have not been signed up to get security announcements in the past. I suppose just because I hear about them anyways. So I had just recently signed up. So these were like the first batch of security releases I got, and they came in yesterday, and it was like, it was confusing. Okay, I'll stop sharing. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Okay, what else?
Well, there's nothing else on the agenda. Greg, do you have any favorite issues?
No favorite,
anyone?
but things that are either blockers or we need technical direction. One thing that affects us generically is the PHPCS mess. So we see that a lot of pull requests, the tests pass, but PHPCS complains. And the issue where we're trying to figure out what's happening is, or at least we know that it's unmaintained. The GitHub action that we're using is unmaintained, so it might be problematic. Is 5893. So there's some discussion between Indigo Zella, Peter, myself, and I just saw that Herb added a comment as well. Yeah. So my stance on it is that at some point we need to bite the bullet. I was working on some views related stuff the other day, and I think that the whole views module and views UI modules are going to be the most, like, there's dozens and dozens of comments without periods at the end, or starting with lowercase. And I mean, literally dozens, not just one here and one there. It's just, I don't know. It seemed to me that certain things, as they didn't go through a review at all, or they're just coming from views.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I think also, so like Views is a great example of like a very prolific maintainer that had their own style that doesn't match the style that we're currently using. And so, yeah, you're going to see that a lot. I don't think there was any like scrutiny given to Vue's module code when it went into core, because we're like, we know this works, just put it over here. There wasn't a lot of like, I know
Yeah.
sometimes when we put stuff in core, they do get a lot of cleanup, especially thanks to you, Greg. I know when going through field group in particular, you fixed all of the inline code comments. So yeah, that's helpful. But I don't think, yeah, I think views will be a problem. And there's probably some other stuff like that too that got, you know, link module, and like who knows? There's just legacy stuff that came from various different places.
My reasoning for suggesting what I'm suggesting in that issue is that usually the pull requests that there are some pull requests that are very substantial, like they touch a few dozen of files, but usually we just touch 1 to 5 files, right? And we can fix those 5 files some way. In some way, the concern that has been expressed there is that what happens with new contributors, where they see that they get errors for things that they haven't touched, and then maybe that frustrates them or demotivates them, right? And my rationale there was like, right, we put it on hold for a moment, and then not necessarily them, but I volunteer as well. We go and fix those files that pull request touched, and then we ask the person to just rebase, and it should be fine. But yeah, then Peter has some concerns there. Anyway, we need some technical direction and a decision there, I guess, and it has to come from the core committees, I guess.
So the current patch excludes all of the test files, and that's supposed to help a lot too. So I imagine there's a lot of issues in the tests, simple tests also. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like more feedback for new contributors is usually good, even if the feedback says something's wrong. I would much rather have that than no feedback at all. I know we have other feedback from our tests and stuff, so maybe not an issue, but yeah, I think.
Okay, and then another issue that I want to bring up is 5987, again, initiative by Peter. The great backdrop spell check. I'm not sure if you saw that, guys. So Kiam Laluno and myself, we already had a pass, and we fixed several things. So I guess it's ready. First of all, just to intrigue you guys and get you to just give it you're gonna have a lot of laughs. Like there's some nice misspellings there. It's just that the people that reviewed the code are not native English speakers. So if you didn't it didn't take me more than 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I guess, to just go through the changes. And the concern there was that there were spelling mistakes in functions and variables, which, yes, there were some misspellings where the misspelled variable or function was consistently being used, so there was no problem. But there were some cases where, yeah, might be.
Yeah, I'm so bad at spelling. I'm not sure me reviewing this is going to be of value, but I can definitely look at it.
As I said, there's 2 people that reviewed it. I'm just reluctant to mark it as a TBC. I would rather if 1 or 2 people just had a really quick look just to see if, and give the thumbs up, and then we can.
Oh, good. Robert's on it. That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm just like, I'm a little bit dyslexic, so sometimes I can't see the difference between the misspelled word and the spelled word. I'm like, they both look fine to me. In case you're wondering why there's so many spelling errors in my code comments. Yeah. So yeah, this is great. How did he do this? Did he run an actual spell checker on the code?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's another issue that he's linked to. Initially, he had on his local, I'm assuming, integrating a GitHub action that runs spell commands, but he split that into a separate issue so that we don't get a lot of complaints. So once we fix the spelling mistakes, then we can merge the other issue.
Okay, that's great.
And the other issue is 5811. So once we merge that, we basically unblock.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great because it's automation and it improves our infrastructure. So it improves everything.
It's great.
And then again, I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure if it folded. Did we fix the problem that Irina had with Pantheon? Did we?
I think we did.
Did it work for her? She told me she implemented, like she upgraded to Maria 10.6 and it didn't fix anything. For
Well,
her.
I don't know if there's more than one thing, but there was definitely one thing she told me got fixed.
Okay.
She was very happy with that. Now, that could have been an earlier thing and there's a newer thing, because there was something that was just being talked about a week or two ago. And I'm not sure if that one.
Yeah,
So
I filed.
what
I mean-
I thought was going on was that the reason that the update didn't work is because Pantheon uses this really old version of MariaDB, and if you update to a newer version of MariaDB, then the install problem won't work. I upgraded one of my sites to that version of MariaDB just to see if there were any other issues, and it was totally fine. But we did notice that the backdrop status report and telemetry is not able to determine a MariaDB version. It reports all versions as MySQL 5.5. And so there's an issue I found in core where people are like, why do we have so many versions of MySQL 5.5 being reported? I was like, oh, oops. So Drupal has a patch also where they specifically implemented a whole bunch of logic for if you're running MariaDB, how do you get the MariaDB version and report that? And I think we should probably consider something similar so that we can get more accurate database version reporting.
In any, is there any? I understand that we have this issue with the version not being reported properly in the status report, but I have filed a pull request that basically updates the, I don't know what you call it, the template, the backdrop template, so that people that are doing the same steps that Irina was trying won't get into that issue.
Yeah. There's no reason not to update the version of MariaDB on Pantheon, even if our reporting issue isn't resolved yet, because that's reporting is 5.5 now, and it'll be reporting as 5.5 afterwards. There's no change in the reporting. Exactly. So we might as well fix the problem.
So looking in the tasks that we have for each release, I see that Laren is responsible for maintaining the ops.
Laren and her both alternate, I think, depending on who's available. I'm not sure that one person that has specific ownership of it.
And Laren 2 weeks ago just gave it a thumbs up. It says looks good to me, but he didn't merge that.
Okay.
Should I ping them both?
Yeah. If Laren reviewed it, then he can't be the one to merge it. So maybe.
Is there anything that we need to do to push things? Does Pantheon pull from that template, or do we need to? I'm sure that they know that.
Yeah, I know Pantheon pulls from our GitHub repository. I don't know if they need to tag a specific release number or anything. It might just always pull whatever's the latest. We don't really push anything that's not.
Well, I don't see any releases or tags.
Okay, yeah, so we probably just push it exactly what's in Backdrop Core over there, and it probably pulls from latest. Anything else we should talk about? We are nearing the end of the hour. I have one thing I'm very excited about. Just want to share. So I just
Sure.
spent like the last week and a half working on a Drupal to Backdrop upgrade, which I really hope I get to do. It's going to be my biggest one. It's a site that has like 15,000 nodes on it. It's got upwards of 50 contrib modules. And I started the like spreadsheet for my estimate like a year or so ago, and they decided they were just going to wait and see what happened to Drupal end of life. We're like, we'll revisit in a year. So it's a year. I revisited. I was so impressed of all of the modules that were on their list. Like half of the ones that weren't ready last year are ready this year. There's just been so much progress. And so, yeah, I was just like, I'm glad we waited a year. Here's your new estimate. It's just really great. Two of the areas that are the most painful for them are they heavily use Workbench module, Workbench moderation, Workbench email, Workbench, like a bunch of little like Workbench add-ons, which I don't think we have any of that for Backdrop yet. And because Backdrop has this new unpublished future revision thing that we introduced, that could be a little tricky getting that integrated. And then the other section is they use Panelizer heavily. And so we are going to need a layoutizer equivalent for Backdrop, which I think will also be fun to work on, but also tricky to integrate. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to working on those and yeah, spending a lot of time in Backdrop in my near future. Less time on Drupal, more time on Backdrop.
Good. One other thing, we just realized that the save the dates for Backdrop Live are a month from tomorrow. So
Okay.
we're 4 weeks out from the next Backdrop Live. So we need to get
Ooh.
going on that. If
Okay.
assuming that we haven't decided to change the dates, which I don't have any reason to do, I think we just need to get going on that. So Jen, I hate to always ask you
Yep.
this, but if you can help with the just getting the registration live is always the big thing.
Okay.
Uh,
I
although it
think
shouldn't
last
be.
time I wrote some documentation on this. I'll go see if I can find that. And then I'll see if I can follow it. And then if it is, then maybe anyone can do it in the future. If not, I will fix it.
If so, you were doing some stuff to automate the creation of a new event. If you want to like share that or show, like schedule
think-
a moment to go through it with me or somebody else,
Okay.
so that you're not the only one who knows how to do this stuff, that would be good.
Yeah, I'm writing a user interface that I'm trying to make self-explanatory, but I'm not sure it's there yet. So yeah, I'll go through my notes from last time and see how close they are to having all of that be ready. But yeah, I think we're
If we could just
It
get
should be
the
close.
registration live, I think that will allow other people to start doing other stuff.
There also we are theoretically getting access to the Suffer Freedom Conservancy's Stripe account for
Oh,
transactions. We don't have that yet, but it will be pretty easy to switch our registration system over to something that
good.
transacts through Stripe. So I will also look into that. I don't know if that's going to come around in the next 4 weeks though. So let's not count on it for this
Yeah.
coming back. But
Sounds good.
worth looking
Just
at.
before we close, back on the issue with MariaDB, we have issue 5496, which is the issue that Irina started. So there's a pull request there for Backdrop Core, which basically breaks down the sequence of dropping the tables and regenerating them. So okay, we fix things with Pantheon, but the fact remains for this that if there's all the other hosting providers that have this specific version of MariaDB, things are going to break. So if we know that it's broken for a specific version of it, and it fixes it with a simple sort of like pull request, it's just, I don't know, 3 lines of code changed or something like that. Should we merge that as well?
Yeah, I think we have to leave that for a core committer to decide. I think it's probably a good idea to merge it also, but I don't know if there's any specific reason why it was done the way it was done to start with.
Yeah, so basically what the pull request does, there was a single line of code that would do the renaming of the field, then the adding of the new indexes. But what I've done is I just broke it down into create the field and then separately add the two indices, and then that fixes the thing. So it's I consider it like it's more
Trivial
inline comments.
change.
Yeah, it's more inline comments rather than actual changes. So anyway. Okay. There's so many good issues.
Interesting. Yeah, they had a huge change at once. I see. Yeah, that looks harmless.
Okay, should we at least, let's end the Zoom call, or the live stream?
Yep.
If
All right.
people want to hang out
Thanks,
for a
everyone.
minute, they can. Yep. Thanks, everybody.